The City of Phoenix holds community budget hearings throughout April, allowing residents to comment and make suggestions on the city manager's trial budget before final decisions are made. This public discussion is among the reasons the city's budget so closely matches the community's highest priorities each fiscal year.
I want to welcome all of you. I'm Councilwoman Felda Williams. I'm filling in for Councilman Valenzuela, who had a death in the family and couldn't be here. So it's my honor to be here and listen for him, and I will tell him what I hear tonight. I thank you very much for coming. It is very important that you're here because your voice can make a change in the budget. It is your budget, and we like to listen to what you have to say and to hear what your priorities are. So if you haven't filled out a card, please do. We want to get you on record who's speaking. And I also want to introduce our city manager, Ed Zucker. So, Ed.
Thank you, Councilman Williams. Thank you for stepping in for your colleague, Councilman Valenzuela. Our thoughts are with him. We have Mia from Council District 5 here, and we have Julie from Mayor Stanton's office here, and we have several city staff. So thank you all for being here today. This is our budget for proposal for 2017-18. It's a trial to get people's feedback, and then the council considers in May what to do. We have a video that takes about 10 minutes. We'll go through that, and then we'll take comments. We do have Spanish language translation if anyone needs translation in Espanol. Introduce yourself. Thank you. Thank you for being here. When you speak, we'd ask that you speak from the microphone up here so that Rod can get you for Phoenix 11 and also so it can be heard. This is taped and made available on YouTube for anybody else to see, and there are minutes and notes being taken. They'll be distributed to council members. We have 3 budget hearings going on tonight, so we got people all over the place, and so it's not possible for people to be everywhere, so that the council gets a copy of the comments made so that they can hear what is said in other districts. With that, I think we will roll the video, and then we will talk about the budget and your thoughts on it. Thanks.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to your first look at the City of Phoenix 2017-18 trial budget. The City of Phoenix wants to hear from you. Your ideas can help shape the budget each year. The final budget provides the plan for how the city will spend taxpayer money on key services you want and need, like police, fire, transit, city parks and swimming pools, libraries, youth and education, graffiti prevention, arts and culture, and help for seniors, and how they all could be impacted. The 2017-18 Phoenix City budget is balanced as required by state law and city charter. In this trial budget, the city is preserving the services our residents value. Out of the $1.2 billion general fund budget, there is a small $1.9 million surplus. This video will present proposals on how to use these funds. So here's how the city's budget breaks down. There are 3 sources: the general fund, enterprise fund, and special revenue fund. Let's start with the general fund. 3/4 of the general fund is for police, fire, courts, with the remaining 25% going for everything else like libraries, parks, senior services, arts, and administrative and support functions. Enterprise fund departments include aviation, water services, solid waste services, and the convention center. Special revenue funds come mostly from dedicated taxes that must be used for a specific purpose. For example, the Phoenix Parks and Preserves Initiative, also called 3PI, or Transportation 2050. That funding goes for transit, light rail, and streets. Under the strong leadership of the mayor and city council, we are glad to say the budget is balanced. Phoenix employees strive every day to work smarter, save money, and serve our customers. That includes making sound financial decisions, like keeping our credit rating strong, spending within our means, and looking for savings to use for important community services. Now let's take a look at the recommendations for additions to the budget for next fiscal year. In the general fund, there is a little less than $2 million extra, plus some opportunities to use funds differently to add service. First, adding 16 civilian police assistants. They will take over some administrative duties, freeing up officers so the officers can respond to emergency calls.
So adding police assistants to our existing staffing resources is going to do a couple of things. It's going to get our first responders back on those priority calls for service faster and increase our service delivery to our community.
Next, focusing on homelessness in our city. The plan is to create more outreach teams by eliminating 6 vacant positions in the Human Services Department. This would free up about $500,000 to send teams of outreach workers to homeless residents on the street to connect them with services and a place for shelter.
These services are critical to the city. These professional outreach teams will work hand in hand with our community partners, neighborhoods, police, to bring these really important services to a very vulnerable population.
For the library, there are 2 recommendations. Contract savings would make security at Burton Bar Central Library permanent, and the other is to create more opportunities to engage kids in educational programs. Now, that leaves about 1/3 of the surplus untouched. So the proposed budget calls for strategically setting aside that funding, about $641,000, into a rainy day fund. The intent is to offset a potential deficit in the 2018-19 budget, which was projected in the city's 5-year forecast. Okay, time now to get back to the 2017-18 budget proposals. Let's look at the enterprise funds. These services are funded with user fees, with the exception of the Phoenix Convention Center. The budget calls for putting a new emergency operations center and ambulance at Sky Harbor International Airport. This would ensure that if anyone at the airport needs medical attention, they can get to the hospital quickly from Sky Harbor. Next, the Solid Waste Funds pays for our trash collection and recycling services. It's proposed to add 8 positions to enhance worker safety and increase collections. Perhaps you've heard of the Reimagine Phoenix campaign? This is all part of support for the goal from mayor and council to divert 40% of what ends up in our landfills by the year 2020 through recycling, composting, and education. Okay, now to other restricted funds, which are dedicated to specific services. The Phoenix Parks and Preserve Initiative Fund comes from a 1/10 cent tax to support our world-renowned parks system. To support safe use of our parks and preserve system and public safety, the trial budget would add 22 new park rangers. This would extend trailhead hours and provide additional support at flatland parks around the city.
By adding rangers, we can extend the park hours at specific locations by 2 additional hours, which means that instead of hiking in the heat of the day, you can hike a little bit later. You can drive actually into the trailhead and continue your hiking later into the evening while it's still a little bit cooler.
13 of the new park rangers would be assigned to the city's more heavily visited locations, including North Mountain, Piestewa Peak, South Mountain, and other trailheads like Echo Canyon, Cholla, and Lookout Mountain. The other 9 would be assigned to flatland parks.
Additional rangers in our community and flatland parks provide that extra layer of customer service that we currently don't have, and it'll provide an opportunity for people to get education or learn more about what's going on in the parks and just provide that extra layer of enhanced customer service.
Also included would be funding to maintain 2 new dog parks, one at Reach 11 and the other at Deer Valley Park. From the Transportation 2050 funds, the budget calls for expanding service on some of the busiest routes around the city. It would also increase weekday midday frequency on routes serving Thomas and Camelback roads. And from the Development Services Fund, the proposal is to add several positions to keep up with increased building permits and inspections due to economic growth. Also, to increase and enhance communication and continue our efforts to streamline processes. One last important update is on the hiring of more police officers and firefighters. The city is on target to meet its recruiting goals of 3,125 officers and 1,615 firefighters.
This budget that we're talking about now includes the addition of roughly 250 officers next year, getting us to our sustainable goal.
So it's important for us to keep the public safe and live within our means.
In 2009, our public safety funds were significantly in a deficit. To avoid layoffs and to balance the budget, we stopped hiring. By 2015, we were back, and we've been hiring police officers and firefighters since then.
While we're down from our peak level of staffing in the police department, we're also significantly down in our calls for service to the department. Over the last few years, as population and calls for service have increased, we're also fortunate to return to hiring officers.
So we've been recruiting in-state for a long time, but now we have that extra effort to be able to go out of state to recruit. What an amazing opportunity to increase the number of people that we find and can look for to build our staffing here in the Phoenix Police Department.
It allows a safe, effective response to whatever emergency is happening in the city of Phoenix. So whether it's a heart attack, if it's a house fire, structure fire, if it's a mountain rescue, is that by having 4-person staffing, it ensures adequate, safe response to meet whatever needs we encounter.
Now keep in mind, this year's budget hasn't been adopted just yet. Your input is important, and the City of Phoenix wants to hear from you on what the upcoming budget should look like. So to recap a few highlights. The 2017-18 trial budget calls for 16 new police assistants to free up sworn officers from administrative work, 22 park rangers, which would allow some trailheads to be open longer during the summer, eliminating 6 vacant positions to free up money to expand the city's homeless outreach. Again, this is a balanced budget with some money set aside as a head start for future use. 17 public hearings will take place this month across all council districts, and you are encouraged to attend. Make sure you pick up a budget pamphlet outlining all the proposals and options at any of the public meeting or online at phoenix.gov/budget. You can also send your comments or questions to budget.research@phoenix.gov, or to reach us by phone, please call 602-262-4800. You can also comment on social media by using #PhoenixBudget. Thank you for your interest in the City of Phoenix budget and being a part of the budget process.
All right, thank you for your attention to that. As it said, this pamphlet has more detail, and even more detail is available online, phoenix.gov/budget. I think at this point we'll go to questions and comments. Councilwoman?
I only have 2 cards here. Feel free to fill one out and speak. This is your opportunity. Stephen Feldman? Or Tater?
50% chance.
You told me you were trouble when you came in the door.
I am. Thank you very much. And I have a couple of comments, and one I'd like to comment on the budget itself. I'm going to try to be candid, as those of you who know me, I generally am. And number one, my second comment is about funding for police departments. I love police departments. I love city budgets. I worked many years in city government. My problem with the budget is, first of all, I want to commend you for putting in those officers that are not sworn officers that are going to do the kind of the administrative thing, the traffic kind of things. It was an idea that was brought up 2 or 3 times in the past. It's really nice it was done this time. Secondly, my concern about the budget, and I don't mean this in an offensive way, but it's very hard to make comments about a budget when it's an incremental budget and when it says, well, we're making these kind of cuts and we're not going to use these funds this year, so we're going to do other programs rather than these programs, without any indication, and maybe I missed it, without any indication what the costs of that were going to be. I think the citizens have a right to know what the costs are going to be, because if those funds are not needed for what they were used in the past, they should be reduced, and they should be justified for new purposes. I think it would be a lot easier to make comments on it if in your proposed budget, the discussion budget, we knew what the costs were that were being reduced and being replaced. The second comment I have is about police departments. Everybody thinks we need more police departments. Love to have a cop, police officer, outside my house 24/7. I think everybody would like that. But I think sometimes we don't recognize why some people in the community, and I think our former sheriff said there was a war on cops, war on police, why people have concerns. There's a couple of things that are happening that I think make people very nervous about just talking about increasing cops or police officers. One is, ever look at the TV where there's a police-involved shooting, the PIO gets on before the gun is cool and justifies why the officer did what they did. And then they say they're going to have an investigation. That doesn't instill much confidence in the public that there's going to be legitimate investigation. Secondly, ever hear police officers say, we don't give each other tickets. It's a courtesy. That is interpreted to the public as they're above the law. Third, have you ever seen police officers go into a restaurant? And you might say it's not done here, but it is. And I've seen it, where they get free coffee, free food, because restaurants want them to be in there. That's probably not appropriate. The public sees that. And I guess the best example I could think of, and it wasn't the city police, but it was the state police. And it was a freeway shooter, which people in this area are very concerned about. They arrested a guy, held him for 6 months, and then said, oops, but still say that he did it. But they don't have the evidence to prove it. What kind of trust do you think that instills in the public of all police officers? So I guess what I'm saying is I think we need a culture change in the police department. I support more police officers, but not with the culture that we've got right now. And I think the chief has some great opportunities to do something, and I would hope that the city manager would speak about that.
So to go back to you asked the question about what costs were being cut. So in the Human Services Department, there was $500,000 being cut from a variety of vacant positions. That's the money that was being put toward the homeless outreach teams. So it's moving costs from vacancies that we're not going to fill to contracts for homeless outreach teams. And in the library, the shift was about $50,000 to do some programming for children in science and education.
Okay, it would be nice if it was in there so people could
Understood.
Specify it beforehand.
Sure.
That's all I have to say. And I mean my comments. I mean it in the best of faith. I think we're really in a good place in the city of Phoenix, and I appreciate both of you do.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Craig Whitman.
Thank you, Councilwoman and Mr. Zerker. I'm representing Central Arizona Shelter Services, the largest homeless shelter in the state. We've been providing services for 30 years, services, beds, and intense services to people. We have some critical budget needs which we face this year and have really caught up to us this year. One of them is we are facing a $200,000 deficit this year, and we will not be able to provide the continued good services that we do provide right now, or we try to provide right now, if we cannot get some more money. Now, we're down about $200,000 from the city from 10 years ago. So I could coincidentally fill that bucket if you wanted me to. Second thing, which I wanted to talk about briefly, is no matter how many beds we have on the campus, we are full. That's just the way it goes. And we currently operate at CAS with 50 clients, 50 homeless people for one caseworker. And that is it's not anywhere near the national standard. It's not anywhere near a level of services that can really help people or that can do what is necessary to help people appropriately. And we'd like to, in order for us to move towards having a case workload, which is appropriate given the size that we've got and whatever future beds occur on the campus, we need more caseworkers, plain and simple. The city, I applaud the city for the outreach program, but that outreach program should bring in more people who are homeless and bring them down to the campus. And when that happens, and who knows how many that will be. We all know there are people who want services and there are people who don't want services. But there will be an additional, there should be, there needs to be, there must be beds on the campus to accommodate these people. And frankly, there need to be caseworkers on the campus to help those people out. And I think that's going to be, otherwise the outreach program, frankly, is just going to be blowing the leaves around. It's just going to be moving people from one Circle K to another Circle K, or from one place to another place. These people need services. The people who want services should be able to get them, and those services should be, really the only place to put them is going to be on the Human Services campus, because that's where the food is, that's where housing services are, and all sorts of other things. And I'll leave you at that. Thank you. Yes.
Sometimes we need to incentivize some of these homeless people. There's a difference between the homeless and the transients.
Yes.
And
taking me into dangerous territory.
I am, but I'm a believer.
Homelessness is both a public safety, and I'm sure people appreciate it. It's both a public safety issue, and it's a humanitarian issue. And I think it does make sense to separate those things out. With the addition of, for example, some of the homeless outreach people, some police officers. I know the transit police are increasing significantly. There is, I want to say this as nicely as I can, but it is important. It's important that a person, well, let me just state it boldly. When you give $1 to a person who's panhandling and is homeless, frankly, all you're doing is making it easier for that person to stay on the street. You know, and I know it's a humanitarian thing to do. I know it feels like the right thing to do, but you're making it easier for that person to stay right there. And that's why we try to discourage feeding programs throughout the city, in parks and at churches and that sort of thing, because a homeless person, there's a lot of data that shows that a person who went there homeless for 40 days or so, that they become a part of a herd. They become part of a homeless group, and their mindset changes to where survival is what they're paying attention to. They're not paying attention. You know, they want today's food. They want to survive till tomorrow. And if we allow people to be comfortable with urban camping, as it's frequently called, if we allow people to feel okay sitting at the curb at the Circle K, I say if we allow, that sounds kind of harsh, but if we don't create a level of discomfort, boy, there are people who would yell at me for that term. If we don't create a level of discomfort, there are a chunk of those people who are not going to be seeking services. And all the outreach program in the world we'll get some people into detox who need to be in detox, some people into mental health services who need to be in mental health services. Those people need to be reached. And then there's the rest. Some of those people don't want services. Some of those people do want services. And of those people who don't want services, we need to encourage them strongly to start to want to seek services and not to be comfortable with the lifestyle that they are living. That's a harsh way to put it, but
no, because it's very true. Danny and I share a border on Northern and I-17, and I-17. I'm truthful. I don't know this area out here that well. My grandkids just live a couple miles from here, but I hope they're not your problem. But I'm just kidding.
Only emotional.
We have this horrible problem, this all up and down I-17, and it doesn't just start at Northern. It goes much further, and I know I'm having the same problem north of Happy Valley Road.
31st Avenue out near where you...
31st Avenue,
Yep.
And when I come down 35th to go to budget hearing this morning, I went by this church, and their whole front was lined with tents and sleeping bags and shopping carts. And I know they want to be good Samaritans, but I constantly talk about turn off electric plugs so that they can't charge their phones on the outside of the churches. Don't feed them, because it is a magnet, because they'll have a phone. They'll tell you where the next hot meal is, because officers have gone out there with city staff, offered all these services over and over and over till I feel guilty, like I'm wasting their time, and they refuse it. They prefer the lifestyle they have. And so I agree. You got to make them uncomfortable.
We've got to make them uncomfortable, and we've got to make it more comfortable. Not more comfortable. We've got to have beds on the campus, and we've got to have caseworkers to address the people that we can get down there. And gosh, I mean, it's a tricky thing because we all want to be humanitarians.
I know. We all want to be the good Samaritan and do the good thing.
Yep.
But good deeds and sometimes have consequences.
We cannot. There's a term, enable. We don't want to enable people to not seek the services that they should have and frankly want. I mean, there's a lot of mental illness, there's a lot of drug and alcohol abuse, all of which can be addressed if a person's in a structured, call it familial environment, with services there, where we have 12-step meetings on the campus. We have we have mental health services on the campus. We have an ID project, so people can go get an ID, and we have community bridges coming by. And I'm going to start lecturing very soon on homelessness.
Okay, all right, then I'm going to cut you off.
Okay.
But thank you very much. Now that you've heard my sermon, come on up. Just say your name and address for the record. I couldn't believe she'd be so shy she wouldn't talk.
I'm not mad about it. Okay. My name is Suzanne Thrain, and I live east of Villa de Paz, and my husband and I have for about 40 years. I do appreciate very much what CAS does and what you offer in the way of programs. Just 2 months ago, we had our MROPE person come out to our block watch, and we spent the entire time talking about the issues that we have in our area, and they are not small issues. The ROPE officer and his partner are about the best in the city, and you probably know them by face and name if I were to do that. 87% of, now these are police numbers, and I don't see them eating free anywhere. I know them quite well. I don't see those kind of abuses, but at any rate, about 87% of the homeless that are in our area have mental illness and medical issues. Okay, we had one case this year of real homeless people. It was a man and a woman and a small child, and we were so proud of what our police officer, our MROPE officers did about this. They without asking somebody else, the city, to belly up with money, they found contacts that they had in the neighborhoods that were willing to help these people get back to where family was. He couldn't find a job here. They needed assistance, and our officers took care of it with benefactors in our own community. One family. The rest of them in our area we know mostly by name. And if you'd like to come on up to our way when you're finished tonight, we can show you where they sleep. And you can meet them yourselves, but you probably have their cousin up on Northern. The folks that are in our particular area are not looking to come somewhere else. They like to be left alone to do what they want to do. Our burglaries have increased on 75th Avenue, 83rd Avenue, West Camelback Road, and West Indian School Road. Between those two streets, we have more and more crime happening on the street than we have in our neighborhood itself. They camp and they're called. We call for assistance for them. We don't want to see them dumped, and we don't want to see them go without. But in our particular area, they don't want to go, no matter how comfortable you make it for them. And are you all aware are you all aware that there are even shelters that animal care places that stand up and say, we'll take care of your, I can't go to Cass because I can't bring my dog. But do you know we have places that will foster, that not only foster, but will keep them in their facilities the full amount of time that they are getting care. So the communities are stepping up, and we are telling them, don't make it, don't give the $1 or $2 or whatever. But good humanitarians continue, and we continue to not have them move. So please consider, and I'm sure there are plenty of people who need a bed. The ones we have prefer to carry their bed on their grocery cart or pick up one off the street. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. I'm going to ask, I'm going to say thank you for the comments about the homelessness, and we have addressed in the budget. Thank you for also reminding me, we don't have our officers taking freebies, and they're not supposed to. They don't. That's not the culture of our department. And if somebody sees that, they should let the chief know. We have Chief Roberts here. Let's be specific and not paint all of our officers with that, because that's not fair to them.
Since I made that comment, I have seen it, and I will report it in the future, but let's not
Great.
deny it. Just because it hasn't been reported, because it's been a culture of many police departments, not just me.
Oh,
I will in the future.
I appreciate that. I would ask, I'm going to ask Ryan Balch from our Human Services Department, if she would just come up for just a minute and talk a little bit about the work that's being done by our Human Services Department with our great police officers and firefighters in coordinating and the kind of things we're working on to give a little bit of input there. Put Ryan on the spot here. Sorry about that, Ryan.
No problem. Thank you, Councilman, for your comments as well. So the City of Phoenix, I'm Ryan Balch. I'm the Deputy Director over Victim and Homeless Services for the city. And I know it's a really tough problem out there. There are more people experiencing homelessness than I've ever seen in my entire career, having worked in this area for a long time. So it's very unfortunate, and I appreciate your comments. Our approach at the city is a couple-fold. One of them is the most important thing probably is to focus on housing. So I heard a couple people, Craig, to talk about the importance of not giving to people on the streets, which is a very difficult conversation and philosophy to have, but we want to concentrate our efforts on engaging people and reaching people and bringing them into services so that we can get them off the streets and into housing. I think the most stunning statistic is that for someone who's living unsheltered on the street, their average longevity is 47. So for me, that's like a year or two here, and that's really scary. So every minute counts when someone's living on the street, so we really want to do everything we can do to get them in. So meals, clothes, humanitarianism, as you put it, it can sort of enable folks to stay on the streets. So we want to not do that. So where we're trying to put our dollars is into outreach and engagement, and so we're really trying to focus our resources there. And what we're doing is we will put a contract out for professionals, behavioral health oriented professionals who have expertise and medical services and transportation and all the things that you really need to deal with someone who has complex issues. And they will be out on the streets engaging them, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but however many times it takes to build that relationship with them and bring them in off the streets. Because as you know, that is what it takes. But once you do, that's a lifelong change for that individual and then the next individual. So our goal is to bring people in, not have them live on the streets, and put them into housing. So it starts with engagement, and then the next steps are, we have at the city, our council has prioritized public housing vouchers to house the most vulnerable folks. So those folks that have been on the streets for years have multiple substance abuse, mental health, medical issues, all exacerbated by being unsheltered and not having health care. They need support for a lifetime in some cases. And so we're putting them in subsidized housing. And it's very cost effective for the city. It costs about $14,000 a year to house somebody each year with services, and it costs about $40,000 to $50,000 to leave them on the streets and have them be using the emergency rooms, police officers, all of the things that you come in contact with when you're on the streets. So it's cost effective, and it's also life-saving. So outreach and engagement followed up by housing. We also have, if any of you are interested, efforts to work with churches. We do a lot of outreach to churches to try to do education, and I don't mean just churches, but people who do humanitarian work to try to educate and provide alternative ways to help people, because people just want to help. That's what they're out there wanting to do, and we have all kinds of ways you can do that without inadvertently adding to the problem. So let me know if you want any more of that information. Perfect. All right.
Okay, we have no more cards. Does anyone else want to speak? Oh, you're being too quiet. Come on, guys. No one? All right, well, in that case, thank you for coming, participating. You can still have time to text us, email, go online, and any form, all over the web, contact, or be sure and call Danny's office. But again, thank you for coming and participating. Thank you, Ed, and thanks all the staff.
You have been watching a community budget hearing held recently in Phoenix. For questions, comments, or ideas, please visit phoenix.gov or call 602-262-4800. You can also send feedback through social media by using #PhoenixBudget. This video can also be seen online at phoenix.gov/PHXTV or youtube.com/City of Phoenix AZ.